Hello, my angel besties. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Rachel, and today's video is going to be a tag video. Hannah Blackwell created the fantasy romance reader book tag, and she so graciously asked me to participate, and I am so excited. Any chance that I can take to talk about fantasy romance more, I'm going to do it. So the tag is pretty self-explanatory. The fantasy romance reader book tag is all about getting to know the fantasy romance reader, their likes, their dislikes. I'm very, very excited to talk about my favorite subject, honestly. Let's get into these questions. I will also have the questions in my description box below, so I would love for you guys to answer these questions down in the comments. I want to know what your faves are and what your least faves are, and I'm just really, really excited, so let's get into it. All right, question number one. What book got you into fantasy romance for the first time? Very fun, very exciting question. For me, that was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, the first book in the Crescent City series. This is where it all started for me. This is the very first fantasy romance book that I ever read, and there was no turning back after this point. I love this book. I've just been really thinking about this book a lot lately and thinking this actually might be my favorite book of all time, just because of the impact that it had on me and just how fondly I think of this book. Not only is this the very first fantasy romance book that I ever read, but through reading this book, this is how I discovered BookTube, which is pretty crazy. So a little side tangent here for a second, but in 2020, I was kind of like slowly taking up reading again. I read a ton as a kid and kind of through my teen years, but sort of in my late teens and early 20s, I was reading maybe 1 or 2 books a year. So during 2020, I started to read again, and I was maybe reading like a domestic thriller every month or 2 months, something like that, but nothing really gripping my attention, but kind of slowly getting back into it. And then I remember I went to Barnes & Noble in December. I think we were like buying a gift card for Christmas for someone, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna buy a book today. I want to buy a book, I want to take it home, I want to read it. I feel like I haven't read fantasy in a very long time, so let me see what the adult fantasy section of Barnes & Noble has to offer. I randomly picked this book up. I had never heard of Sarah J. Maas. I had never heard of ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, Crescent City, nothing. I picked this up purely, I think, because the cover is really cool. And I read the inside of the dust jacket and I was like, sure, let's do it. I'll read this. I have no idea what I'm getting into, but you know, let's see what this book has to offer. And this book just completely blew me away. I was in love with it. It was like the first fantasy that I had read in such a long time, and I just had so much fun reading it. And when I finished this book, I was like, I want to know what other people think of this book. I want to like go online and see, are people talking about this book? Like, have other people read this? I mean, obviously other people have read this, but I was like, I just want to see, I want to, you know, engage in a community and see what people are reading. So I was like Googling House of Earth and Blood reviews. I found a few blog posts at this time. So this was, I read this at the end of December 2020. So this was like early January 2021. I had never heard of BookTube. I had never heard of Goodreads, you guys. I was from another planet, okay? It's so crazy. In January of 2021, I didn't know that this community existed, which is wild because like now it's such a big part of my life. But anyway, I decide after going through some like blog posts on Google and things like that about this book, I was like, I wonder if anyone has ever uploaded a review of this book on YouTube. Can you imagine? Oh my God, I was just a babe in the woods. So I go onto YouTube and I type in like House of Earth and Blood, Crescent City book review, and you can imagine what pops up. Every single booktuber's reading vlog and, you know, review of this book and wrap-ups and all these things pop up onto my screen. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, there's lots of people who do this. And I started watching everyone's videos and I kept hearing the term booktube and I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is like a community on YouTube of readers. And then I was hooked pretty much from there. So I owe this book a lot. Not only did it introduce me to my favorite genre, but it introduced me to the community that I am now a part of and love so much. So House of Earth and Blood, she gets all the flowers. She's amazing. I owe her my life. I absolutely love this book. I think it's so fantastic. I love the characters. And I think it's just a really cool urban, modern fantasy. And yeah, I love it so much. Okay, so that was like the longest answer ever to one simple question. So moving on to number 2, the question is, if you could pick one fantasy world to move to for the rest of your life, which world would you move to? Prythian. Prythian, easy. I have nothing else to say. I have no backstory for that one. Absolutely the world in the ACOTAR series. It's so cool. It is, you know, separated out by seasonal courts and solar courts, and it would just be so cool to be in the summer court and then the night court and the day court and the autumn court. I just think that would be amazing. It sounds really beautiful, really magical, and it is like pretty medieval, which would be different, but I just think it would be so much fun, and I just absolutely love that world. When I read the ACOTAR series, I feel very transported, so definitely Prythian, 100%. Okay, so question number 3, if you could marry one bookish hero or heroine, who would it be? For me, I have to go with my gut, and my gut says Cassian. I love Cassian. He's my favorite bat boy. I love him so much. He is so funny. He's the Lord of Bloodshed. Hello. Like, he's everything. I will say maybe when Asriel gets his own book, because I know that that's coming someday, Asriel could beat out Cassian, because I'm very intrigued by Asriel. There's so much mystery surrounding him. There's like so much backstory that we need on him, but I like the mystery of Asriel, but just because I know Cassian so much better, and like, I feel like I could be friends with Cassian the best out of the Bat Boys. Like, he just seems like a very kind person. He's amazing. So definitely Cassian would have to be my fictional husband. Okay, so question number 4 is, if you could be one fantasy creature or magical being, what would you be? I'm gonna pick kind of like a boring answer, but I think I would say just like a fae and have like shifting abilities, because they're the most similar to humans and they're just kind of like the better, more beautiful version of us, and they have magical powers. I'd probably want like ice powers or fire power, and then have the ability to transform to something that like flies or something like that. I think that that would be the best of both worlds. You would still kind of get to be a person, but you would live a really long life and you would have magical powers. And yeah, I think that that would be a really great existence, honestly. Okay, number 5, this one's juicy. If you could kill one fantasy romance character, who would you off? Easily Lionel Acrux from the Zodiac Academy series. I have not read the latest book that is out, I think book number 8. I haven't read that yet, so I don't know what happens. Please, no spoilers, but Lionel Acrux is the devil, and I hate him. Literally, oh my god. I was so frustrated reading the Zodiac Academy series. Anytime he would come on page, I was just like, someone kill him. Come on, someone, let's do this. Like, let's go. I'm ready. I feel like everyone's ready. Someone take him out. And he's like this little cockroach that never goes away. And particularly in my Zodiac Academy reading vlog, there's a part of the vlog where I'm like crying very hard. And I think it's after I finished the 5th book, Cursed Fates, and it is because of this man. He is horrible. He is horrid. I really, really hope that the authors of the Zodiac Academy series do what needs to be done with him, because I hate him so much. He is terrible. He just, oh god, he just like gives me the creeps. He makes my skin crawl. I hate him so much. And I'm really looking forward to his death scene whenever we get it, hopefully. Okay, so number 6 is, what fantasy romance character do you truly believe would be your IRL best friend? Okay. So I had to think about this for a while, because there are characters who I like would hope would be my friend, right? Like, would really hope that Selena would want to be my bestie, but I don't know, she might be too cool for me. I feel like I'm gonna go with Bryce Quinlan, because she and I are very similar. We have similar interests. I think that I can relate to her in a lot of ways, but she's a little bit more outgoing than me, and she's a little bit more extroverted. And a lot of times in my life, extroverts tend to kind of like adopt me. Like, my best friend, she's very extroverted, very like out there, and I'm a little bit more quiet. Sean is the most extroverted person on the planet, and you know, we work really well together, so I feel like I bounce off of extroverts very well, and Bryce is definitely that girl. I think we would have a ton of fun together, and she seems like a really, really good friend too, so I would have a ton of fun being Bryce's bestie. Okay, so question number 7, what would be your fantasy weapon of choice? I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna stretch this question a little bit, because could I say a dagger or a sword? Sure. Could I say a bow and arrow? Yes, but like, that's not very fun, and I don't know, that doesn't feel very special. So my weapon of choice, and I'm stretching, I'm sorry, but I am, I'm gonna say a dragon. Because is a dragon a weapon? No, but like, kind of. There are multiple fantasy series where characters use dragons to go into battle, and they use those dragons to defeat their opponents. This happens in the Game of Thrones series, this happens in Throne of Glass, this happens in Fourth Wing, which I just read, which is amazing, by the way. So, you know, it's not a weapon, but like, it's not a weapon. And the characters like work with the dragons and train them to fight in battle and listen to them and all of that. And I feel like that's kind of the same as training with a sword, right? Like, I feel like that kind of works. I'm gonna make that work. So I would pick dragons, and then I'd have some daggers on me as well. Hi friends, editing me popping in because I forgot a question. Of course I did. And it's like the most important question of this entire tag, which is, who is the sexiest fantasy romance character of all time? So I need to answer this, and I'm supposed to pick one, but like I can't, so I'm just gonna throw in a few contenders here. Number 1, I don't want to do like repeats. I did already talk about him, but I'm gonna say Asriel. Asriel is so mysterious, and I think that that adds to the sexiness. He's also very morally gray. And I swear, like every single person in the ACOTAR series, doesn't matter, men, women, everyone always notes like how beautiful Asriel is. So like, I have to believe he is stunning. So definitely Asriel. Rune Dannon, Crown Prince of the Valbaran Fae, book talk sensation. I love him. He's amazing. Also Rain from The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I love Rain so much. And then also I have to give it up for my girl Manon Blackbeat. She is everything to me and so morally gray and so beautiful. So yeah, she's included as well. All right, moving on to the next question. All right, question number 9. Pick one fantasy romance book to burn. This is rough. I would never burn a book. But if I could get rid of one, I mean, I have to say City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards, I think is the author. The reason why that book just gives me like this visceral reaction when I think about it is because it had promise and I was very disappointed by it. If a book is just bad immediately and I go into it with kind of like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel, and then it's just not good and I don't end up enjoying it, whatever, you know, I knew what I was walking into. But with City of Gods and Monsters, I was like, this is going to be an incredible book. And it started out with promise. I liked the premise. I was into the writing style in the beginning. I was like, okay, I can work with this. I'm excited. And I just felt like more that I read that 700 something page book, the more irritated I got. Our main character was very naive and insufferable and just, I could not stand her. And I just felt like there was a lot going on. The organization of the plot just started to slip away. There were just scenes that were just like not well done. I just think that that book is very disappointing. So that is why, like, that has to be my answer for this question, because it's just a book that so let me down. And I think that is why I just have such an emotional reaction when I think about that book. It really upset me. So unfortunately, City of Gods and Monsters, you gotta go. Okay, question number 10 is mean. It is, you can choose one fantasy romance book. It's the only book you will ever be able to read again. What is it? Hannah, that is such a hard question. Okay, so I went with a book that I think represents the fantasy romance genre very well. I actually think that this book is the blueprint of fantasy romance. And I didn't want to use like the same books for multiple questions. I tried to shake it up with this one. I picked this book because this question, to me, I interpret it as like, this is the only way that I'm going to get fantasy romance. This is the only way I'm going to be able to experience my favorite genre. So I have to make it count. I have to get an interesting plot. I have to get that magical, you know, slow burn. I need enemies to lovers. I need the one bed trope. I need everything that fantasy romance has to offer. So if I could only read one for the rest of my life, I am going with what is, in my opinion, as I said, just like this is the standard of fantasy romance. I feel like this is everything. That would be A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book in the ACOTAR series. I just think that it's a masterpiece. And I truly think that this represents fantasy romance very well. It just offers everything that I love in fantasy romance. So if I'm only going to be able to read one book, I would just want to maximize that experience as much as possible. And this definitely does that. So definitely ACOMAF for this one. All right, and the very last question is, if you could recommend one fantasy romance book to a reader that was new to the genre and wanted to try it out, what would it be? It would be very hard to recommend just one. I think if someone came to me with this question, I would recommend them about 10, but I definitely think that The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent is a really great introduction into the genre. I think once again, we have a really well done fantasy romance. We have a good balance of plot and romance. I think that the fantasy is like pretty surface level, pretty easy to understand. And I just think that the romance between Rain and Araya is well done. It really shines. It's slow burn. It's enemies to lovers. There's just a lot going here and has kind of like all the classic fantasy romance tropes as well. So another book that I think really represents the genre very well. So definitely, I think that this is a great place to start if you are new to fantasy romance and you want to get into it. All right, friends, so that is it. Those are all of my answers for the fantasy romance book reader tag. Once again, I want to thank Hannah for creating this tag and asking me to do it. Oh, and the last question was to tag people in this. I'm just gonna say, if you're watching this, I want to see your answers. I want to see people doing this tag. I think it's so much fun. I think with fantasy romance, there's just so much fun to talk about, and I think that there's so many excellent books in this genre for people to gush over. So if you are watching this and you're a booktuber who reads FanRo, I want to see your tag video. If you made it to this point in the video and you wanted to let me know, go ahead and leave one of the fairy emojis and then a heart to kind of represent that fantasy and romance. Please make sure that you are following my Instagram and Goodreads. Both are always linked down below. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you are having a fantastic day. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.